Hey, Lamar, are you all ready for vacation, man?
Yeah, kind of. I'm ready for vacation, but I got a lot of things that I have on my list to get done.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got two or three of those things too,
Yeah,
but
good.
yeah.
And we
Well,
have some things that you and I need to get done for this channel. It's going to be
yes, we
different
do. Yes, we
forward.
do. And so that's why we are taking a bit of a break in the month of August.
Yeah, not very long.
Not very long. We're going to rerun two of our podcasts in
Yeah.
August on our typical drop dates, right? About every other Tuesday.
Hmm.
And we're going to run a couple of those that were actually the most frequently watched and listened to. I mean,
Right.
the numbers on them are just higher than anything else.
And
And
given where we're at in this season, they're very relevant. They're relevant
oh
to,
boy,
the midterm elections that are coming up and that whole conversation.
that's right. And don't forget Labor Day, which is coming up right after the month of August, is the unofficial or kind of the official or what they call it, the unofficial or official start of the campaign season. But
Yeah. Oh, I
it's
thought you were going to go with shutting down the swimming pools. I wasn't sure what
oh
you were
yeah,
going.
they do shut down the swimming pools too.
Right.
But it's also the start of the fall campaign season.
Right.
And so a lot of this stuff is going to be highly relevant during that time.
Yep.
So we're gonna rerun a conversation we had with a good friend of yours,
Yeah.
Joel Kauffman,
Joel Kauffman.
who is a historian, right,
Hmm.
and has been a teacher and a coach, I guess,
And the vice president of college. I mean,
vice
he's
president of
been around.
college.
Yep.
He's yeah, and so what are you hoping people take away from this?
Well, I hope they get the opportunity to not just watch it themselves, which I encourage people to do, because you may have seen this one already, but because we are talking about what is the difference between a democracy and a republic, and how does this work together, and how's our involvement critical in the whole political game. What we're hoping is that not only will they watch it, but they will share it with others prior to the midterm elections.
So did you hear that, folks? So the expectation is that you are, even if you've heard this or watched this podcast before, we hope you will check it out again and be reminded of what's in there. But what we'd really like you to do is then to send it on to other people.
Right.
I think we should set a goal, Lamar.
I think so too.
How about
I think a nice number is
a
what?
nice number? Okay, I'm thinking of a number. What is the number I'm thinking of, Lamar?
It's greater than 2 and less than 20.
Yes, yes, yes.
Must be 10.
Yes, that's
That's
it.
it.
That's the number.
Okay.
We want them to. We want you, our friends, our listeners, our supporters. Well, actually, if you're listening and watching, you're supporting us because we're not. We don't
Absolutely.
ask for any money, right? So we would like you to send this out to 10 other people and just say,
Yeah.
hey, as we're coming into an election season, these are some important things to think about.
Right. So we're going to do 2 of these, and we're asking for both of these for you to share them with other people.
Right. And so we'll tell you about that one in a couple of weeks.
That's right.
When we drop that one too. But for now, this is going to be our conversation with Joel Kauffman from earlier this year.
Here we go.
Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Lamar, and you're listening to Getting to Third Space with Lamar and Tom. A third space is a term that refers to a safe space for people to come together for respectful dialogue in a spirit of listening, sharing, and learning. In this podcast, we explore what it means to have third space conversations, and we try to model them. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please be sure to subscribe, share it, and of course, like it. The more people join us, the quicker we get to third space as a society. Now let's get to third space today.
Hey, Lamar. It's good to
Hey,
see you,
Tom.
man.
How you doing?
Pretty good. But I got to tell you, I'm not feeling my usual self because I know we got somebody in the green room that I'm really excited to talk to.
Well, good. Well, me too.
So, I've got weird stuff going on. It's flying cow season here in Frederick, and I'm just going to leave it at that. People are going to wonder what the heck's he talking about, a flying cow.
Go online and check it out.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll see Tom and the crowd. And you and I are enjoying some good Iowa basketball.
Oh,
the women won this past weekend.
Of course, we don't know when this podcast is going to drop. So if it drops in June and they're trying to figure out when it,
yeah, that's fine.
So
I'm excited too. For a long time, I've been wanting to get you and our guest Joel Kauffman together to meet, because I think that there's a lot of similar interests you have. Joel Kauffman has been a longtime friend of mine since coming to Hesston, Kansas. He was when I got here. He was on the executive leadership team, and he was also a head basketball coach and teaching some classes
at Hesston College, right?
Hesston College here in Kansas, right? And so during the years I was there, Joel and I developed a friendship and relationship, and eventually he moved in to take the. He was a vice president over admissions, and then he took the role as the AD for the athletic department, which I was responsible for the athletic department as well. And so we had a lot of cross relationships on campus, including teaching a course called Human Thought and Belief. Yeah. And my goodness, that's where the depth of his knowledge and experience just shown, in working with students, and the passion of working with education was so evident. So he's here. He's a history buff. I mean, his education is in the field of history, and his experience is vast. And so we're looking to learn a little bit more about this country through his eyes.
Excellent. Well, let's get him in from the green room in that case.
All right. Let's welcome Joel in. Joel, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Lamar and Tom. It's wonderful.
Good morning, Joel.
Yeah, we brought you in from the green room. Now, we're in a different recording location than we typically do. We're in actually my studio. And so I had you in my green room.
Yeah. It's a very nice green room.
Is it?
Yeah.
Did you get the basket?
I did, actually, and I really enjoyed it. The Swiss chocolate and the caviar. It's not Russian caviar, but it's American caviar, but it's really good.
Well, I was using Tom.
What do you mean? What do you mean caviar?
I was disappointed there was no champagne, though.
Yeah,
I really was.
Wait a minute. You're not using my credit card still, are you?
I was. That's why I couldn't get the Russian payment on the credit card. I couldn't exceed. But no.
So anyway, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
That was wonderful.
We welcome you to the podcast. And this is a little bit different because we're doing a in-studio interview. And but I think it's going to work out great, Tom.
I think so, too. It's looking good.
Wish you were here.
Well, me too. That'd be fun, especially since you guys are enjoying the caviar on my credit card.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't, I don't actually like caviar, but I would eat the chocolate. I mean,
I love caviar.
But, so I want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And this has been in a kind of a long time coming. And I guess we did a little bit of a intro, which we're not going to necessarily tell you what we said on the introduction, but we do want to give you a chance for you to introduce yourself and tell us and tell the audience kind of what you would like them to know about you.
Okay. I am semi-retired. I spent most of my life in higher education, teaching and coaching. I like to read. I'm a voracious reader. I like reading a wide variety of things, fiction, nonfiction, particularly historical kinds of things. I love to cook. I like to travel, and I enjoy meeting people from various walks of life. I find people are fascinating, and it's always really interesting to me to hear people's stories about where they came from, how they, got to the place they are today. And what I found is that most people are way more interesting than you might ever expect. And that I also agree with, I forget who it was. Was it who was the guy who went into the woods to live purposefully and wrote the essay? What was his
Walden
name?
Pond?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
There was something that he said one time that has always stayed with me, and that is most people, he said men, but most people live lives of quiet desperation. And I have found that to be pretty apt in my getting to know and relating to other people.
You lived a variety of different places.
I grew up on the East Coast, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Kentucky. Went to school in the Midwest, lived in California and Nevada, Indiana. Yeah. And so I know a lot of people across the country.
You do. You have this remarkable way of figuring out how people might be connected to each other. I don't know how you
I love doing that. I think maybe it was because we moved around so much when I was a kid. I never felt like there was a place when people would say, "Where are you from?" I was like, well, I don't really know because I don't really have a place. And so I think that has sparked some of my interest in connecting with people that way.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love that. I hate to say it, but when you were talking about this, Joel, I kept thinking of Dion's song, "The Wanderer."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's something about this concept of wandering. Now, I'm not sure exactly he meant the wanderer in the sense that we're talking about it, but there is something about wandering that I find to be really attractive as well. One of my favorite things to do is when I'm out and about is just to start chatting with people.
Yeah.
And to learn what I can about them and their lives, and without being invasive.
Right.
It's not going to. I'm not going to get terribly personal with them, but I just have this curiosity about people. Yeah, very cool.
Well, that makes for an interesting experience and a life journey for sure.
It does. Well, Joel, today we want to talk with you because we know you have a background as a historian and as a history teacher. We want to talk with you a little bit about the concept of democracy, because we're hearing a lot about it right now, and it's important for people to understand. Well, the thing that tends to happen is that people just throw out terms and they use terms without stopping to think, what does that really mean? And so we're doing this because we also feel the need to be a little bit more intentional about how we use the term democracy, how we use the term republic, how those fit together, and what it means to live in a democracy. So let's start with just the most basic question: how do you define democracy?
Well, we do live in a democracy. Some people would say that we don't, but we do live in a democracy is defined. I very simply would say that it is a majority rule versus a republic, which is also a brand of democracy. But it in the United States, at least, we have a constitution that limits the power of government, and because we have three different branches of government that provide checks and balances on each other, and it keeps the majority from creating tyranny for the minority, and gives rights and protects the freedoms of people in the minority in a way that a pure democracy does not.
So a pure democracy would look like what?
Well, it would just be the majority rules, and the majority can do whatever they want,
good or bad.
Good or bad, yes. Yeah.
So in a pure majority, I'm guessing that under a pure majority, somebody would say, okay, we have 50% plus one. That means we get to do whatever we want.
Exactly. Yes.
Which feels a little bit like what's happening today in Congress, right? But if in fact the democracy is working, it has more this role of kind of like the checks and balances that you mentioned. Okay. So, interesting. All right. So can you say a little bit more about what does it mean to live in a democracy, to experience a democracy?
Well, I think it's terribly important to always have the interests of the minority in mind when you make decisions, when you vote. And I think for a democracy to work effectively, I think sometimes people have to vote against their own best interests because it's in the best interests of the whole common good. So sometimes if you're in the majority, you may, I have found myself do this on occasion, vote for something that does not necessarily benefit me, but it will benefit somebody who is not in the majority. And I think for a democracy to really work, and I think we have done that pretty well for the most part. We've had some rocky stretches as well, but for the most part, we have done that as a country. We have never, well, I shouldn't say never. We haven't been as partisan as we are now. And I think that's partly why it's people are starting to question now whether this is actually working anymore.
So I want to have you compare that or contrast that to a republic, or tell us how it works together a little bit more clearly. There is a lot of chatter out there about we are not a democracy, right. We are a republic, and there is a very distinct difference. Yeah. In fact, I just shown you an email from it's a Facebook posting from someone who's responding to a friend of mine's post, saying, I would remind you that we are not, capital letters, not a democracy.
Yeah, well, I would say that a republic is a democracy with the checks and balances that we have in place. A republic is a type of democracy, and so I would kind of disagree with that. That you can be both. But the difference is that in a republic, the minorities' rights and individual freedoms and liberties are protected, whereas in a pure democracy, not necessarily.
So they're protected by Constitution. They're protected by representation.
Yeah.
So what comes to mind for me is that sometimes I've heard the U.S. described as a democratic republic.
Yeah.
Because we have the majority rule piece, but then as a republic, we have kind of a structure, that has the Constitution and those kinds of pieces in it. I'm thinking back to a book that I read a few years ago on culture war, and the guy that wrote it actually was out of the University of Virginia. I think his book is probably back here on my shelf somewhere, but the title of the book is Culture War. And in that, I remember he made the point, it was very interesting to me, that the reason that culture wars are so very difficult to solve is because people come into them and they are held to their position by the interests, not just that they have, but of others that they affiliate with. So in other words, if you're part of a movement over here and you are invited to come into a room where you're trying to figure out how to work with the opposition, especially if you're part of a representative group that comes in, you may be inclined yourself to say, yeah, we can figure out a way to work, but they're going to be held to account by the people on your side.
Exactly.
And so those interests really interfere with being able to do that. And I say that in response to what you said about the necessity for people to vote against or to make decisions against their own interests. And that's something we're certainly not seeing in Congress right now. And people are not choosing to vote against what they perceive as their interests or the interests of that cloud of witnesses that are watching them closely, if that makes sense.
Yeah, compromise has become kind of a bad word in our society today. Yeah. And you're seen as weak or ineffective if you're willing to try to find solutions to problems with your opposition. And I think that's dangerous because nothing then gets done.
I was listening this morning to a commentator who made a really interesting point, and he said the U.S. was best when it was able to have conversation about what they disagreed about and come to resolutions that they were willing to compromise on. And the compromising is a big part of being successful in a democracy or a republic.
Oh, no, absolutely. And, the founding fathers, when they were coming up with the Constitution, they had a lot of disagreement, Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, disagreed vehemently about things, but eventually were able to come to a compromise or come to some type of understanding that has worked for us pretty well for the most part. I mean, we've had rocky patches, but for the most part, it's worked pretty well.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a somewhat of a loaded question here for you. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being a dictatorship and 10 being a full-blown democracy, where is the U.S. today, in your opinion? What are we seeing?
Well,
10
that's
democracy,
a great question.
0 dictatorship.
I'm waiting for the midterm elections in 26 to see what happens there, because I think we are at a tipping point, to where we may never be the same again. I think we're right. I'd say a 5. If that's a kind of a safe answer, I guess, for now. But it'll be interesting to see what happens and whether or not we have election interference, or how much one group wants to try to circumvent the election results or disparage them in ways that make them seem like maybe they aren't fair and real. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm a little I guess I have a lot of faith in this country. I have a lot of faith in people getting those of us who actually go and vote, getting to the point of saying, okay, we've had enough. There is a line that we're not willing to cross. The goodness of people, the perspective that most people have, being able to say this is not okay. In fact, I think we've seen some of that in some of the recent elections that we've seen in the last few weeks. And given that we have the Constitution as kind of this tool, in effect, that keeps our balance, if we follow the Constitution's interpretation of the Constitution as we have. I have. Am I just out in left field by myself saying, what we're seeing is just not, I mean, the administration is doing whatever they want. Congress has no power, but voices aren't being heard. Or is there something to this structure that we have built that can keep us from going down that path? Am I missing something?
Well, I think so much of it depends on the Supreme Court. And whether the Supreme Court has been partisan in the past, but I think they're supposed to be above the fray. And it'll be interesting to see, how many thousands of lawsuits that are in the works now, with more pending. It'll be really interesting to see how much they limit the power of the executive office and keep this from turning into something else. So I'm maybe not as confident quite as you are, Lamar, but I'm glad that you are. That gives me hope.
Okay, can you? I want to go back to what you said about the tipping point between a dictatorship and a democracy. What will tell you? I mean, what you said, you want to wait and see till the midterm elections. But what are you looking for that will tell you whether we've tipped one way or the other?
If the Republicans lose both houses of Congress, if they lose both the Senate and the House of Representatives, I think that will be a huge sign that the American people who are still desiring the kind of constitutional democratic republic that we have typically, the way we have typically functioned. If the executive power continues to go unchecked, I mean, there have been people and groups who have stood up to the current executive branch. But if he hangs on to both houses, and I'm really worried about what will happen going forward to the next presidential election.
Yeah.
And what will happen to our free and fair election that we have had up to this point. Because once there is doubt about whether the elections are accurate, I think well that's a slippery slope as to where you slide then, when
But
people
we've
lose
certainly-
faith in the system.
We've certainly kind of been there since 2020.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, just kind of a chipping away at our faith in the elections. When we were talking as kind of a well, folks maybe do or don't know this. We always do a meet and greet with our guests before we bring them on, and during that time, we were talking a little bit about, I think you used the phrase that about there being, whether there's an ethical culture in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? Can
I
you
do.
say more? What is an ethical culture in politics?
This idea that you're not always going to get everything that you want, and because sometimes what you want might be good for you is bad for someone else. And so when we lose our empathy and our inability to understand and see what certain legislation or programs or whatever negatively impacts other people, and we lose our ability to care, or our capacity to care about that, I think we're in trouble.
But it sounds like this little light just went on for me, that what you're really talking about is what we talked about just a few minutes ago, which was about the ability to vote against your own interests.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right. And
Mhm.
and when, as long as we have that, then we do have a more ethical political
I would agree.
culture.
Mhm.
Okay.
When we talk about democracy and republic, in my head, sometimes I see it more clearer when I look at local
Mhm.
politics
Mhm.
and state politics, and then and national politics, and kind of look at those three arenas and say, okay, I really see kind of the democracy majority rule
Mhm.
in local
Yeah.
politics, right? Because my
Absolutely.
vote counts. We had a school
Yeah.
bond issue
Yeah. Mhm.
a couple of years ago, where in our area it was like 10 votes or something.
It was less than that.
Less than 10
Yeah.
votes passed it.
Right.
So theoretically, half of our community was for the bond and
Mhm.
half was not.
Right.
And so it was
Yeah.
so that would be the
And
majority rule.
that's also I mean, I voted for it, but I don't have any children in the school system.
That's what I wanted to get to.
And it meant that my taxes are going to go up.
Right.
But I voted for it because I thought it was best for our community for me to do so, because I felt like the building project was important. And that's what I'm talking about when I say sometimes we have to vote against our own interests for the greater good.
And on the flip side of that,
Yeah.
I mean, we also vote for our representatives.
Yes.
which is more of the republic model, and or we vote against people who've been in office that represent us, because we don't feel they're representing the majority of our concerns. But when it comes to the kinds of things Tom is referring to, and that we've been talking about in the national arena, they're the ones who are casting the votes. And we have the right as individuals to hassle them, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I have done that.
Yeah.
Where I've met with some. I have emailed. I have called when I felt very strongly that I wanted them to hear my voice and take account of that in their. Not that they necessarily did,
right.
But that's part of what options I have as a person in this democracy.
Yeah. What we can't do is to get so jaded or cynical that we quit participating. That just exacerbates then the issues that we're talking about.
Tom here. Getting to third space is always free. We love doing this, and it is a labor of love we hope makes the world a better place. We don't ask you for money, but we do ask you to help us grow our audience. Hit the like button, share the podcast, and subscribe yourself. All of these will help us grow. Thanks.
Did you grow up always participating in the process?
I did not. I grew up in a household where my parents were very non-political, they never voted in an election, any local or national election in their lives. And but when I was able to vote, then I started voting at probably in my early 20s.
Yeah,
because I think it's important to.
I remember what turned because I also grew up in a family that did not participate in the local or in the national elections or local elections. But I remember after graduating high school, coming back for a time with my buddies and our significant others that we were involved with at the time.
Right.
And one of my friends was involved with one of the parties as, involved in a campaign. And I remember him asking me, we were all talking about our perspectives. I remember him asking me, well, did you vote? And I thought, I did not. He says, then what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And that changed my perspective forever. It's like, why do I have it? How can I have an opinion if I'm not part of the process?
Right. Yeah. No, people have to get out and participate to make this democracy work. And, I think until more recently, because it's become so partisan, I think people are more tuned in and interested in casting a vote than they were maybe 20 years ago. Because I think they did feel like, my vote really doesn't matter.
I remember, so it goes back to that saying that, you don't have a leg to gripe on if you don't participate, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to complain, make sure that you're part of that process, or otherwise you just kind of give up that right to do that. At another time too, we were talking about, and I think Lamar actually asked you this question during our meet and greet. We hear that the United States is this great experiment, right? That democracy has been a great experiment. What does that mean? What does it mean that we've been a great experiment here in the U.S.?
Well, at the time when the founding fathers were attempting to come up with a new form of government that did not include an aristocratic king or queen or family, and this idea about the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness is a right of everyone. That was groundbreaking. I mean, that was really unheard of for the most part at that time. That peasants, people, uneducated people, and people at the bottom of the social and political ladder actually had a right to happiness. In the pursuit of that, that was unusual, and so it was an experiment because nobody really knew how it was gonna end up. Is it even possible?
And we'd just been through the Revolutionary War, which the whole thing was to get us out from under the rule of a monarchy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where the belief or the understanding in a monarchy is that those in royal power had the best interests of everybody at heart.
Yeah, and that works as long as they're benevolent. That actually works pretty well if they're benevolent.
Yeah,
but there's also the potential for the people at the bottom to just really, really have horrible lives and no rights at all.
Yeah.
So the founding fathers were just coming off of that kind of a rule and tried to figure out how can everyone have this pursuit that you talked about.
Well, they were people who had drunk pretty deeply of the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution that was happening at the time, and the writings of Descartes and some other philosophers that were really talking about this idea of individual rights and individual rights of man, which was kind of a buzz thing at the time in certain circles. And I think they said, well, let's see what would it look like if we created a constitution that protected those rights for individuals. And again, nobody knew how it was gonna end up.
That's the experiment.
That's the experiment. Yeah,
that's the experiment. So. All right, so I'm feeling very Greek again today here, guys.
Yeah.
Well, we got into this a little bit in our meet and greet. But something you said, Joel, made me think that, said that it works well when the leaders are benevolent, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's perhaps maybe what led Aristotle to suggest that maybe the best form of government was a polity,
Mhm.
where you had in his thinking, I think a class of people that were the leaders and everybody else under them, and very similar to kind of a democratic republic, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But again, as you said, if the leaders are not benevolent, if they don't have this ability, this ethical culture to be able to set aside their own interests, then what do we end up with? Do we end up with something like what we got today, or that we fear that we may have?
Yeah. Well, what happens is mankind or humans, they revert maybe to their lowest form of greed and avarice when that happens. And, humans have a hard time if they feel like they're missing out on something that everybody else is getting, even if they don't really need it. And I think there's a feeling in this country, as the wealth gap continues to widen, that there are people in this country who have, because of whatever status, position in life, position they were born into, they have a leg up on everybody else. And they're getting something that I'm not, and so I better get it while I can. And I think I just think we've become more greedy as humans, and maybe that's just human nature. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we've talked about how this kind of this experiment kind of impacts how we function internally as a country. How do you think this impacts how we function externally, how we relate to other countries, how we interact with with other countries, trade wise, providing care and assistance, how we get involved in maybe their political world. How, do you see a connection here, or do you see a breakdown of this experiment? What's your thought about that?
Well, I think our policy and our ideas about how the role that the United States plays in other countries or in the rest of the world has ebbed and flowed over the years in terms of how much we get involved and how much we assert our influence and power, both economically and militarily. And I think right now what we're seeing is, I think, a lack of confidence in the whole diplomatic process and using diplomacy to create or enact the things that we want to see in the rest of the world. There's a lot more of an isolationist feeling in the United States today than there was even 20 years ago. Although I think it was starting to change. Maybe that was the beginning of some of that change. But look, we'll take care of ourselves, and the rest of you guys are on your own. And I think that's a rather small-minded way of looking at that whole. I mean, good Lord. One of the greatest examples of that is what happened in Afghanistan. When we thought the Taliban was done or they were defeated, and we just pulled everything out instead of there were no social and economic things Afghanistan was in shambles, and because we just pulled out, and maybe I'm going down a rabbit trail here.
No, that's okay.
We just pulled out of that almost immediately, and as a result, left that country wide open to anybody to go in there and create whatever they wanted there, and as a result, that's why we have what we have in Afghanistan today.
I think that's a really good example because for a democracy to work and a republic to work, the Constitution is key to have.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you are assuming that we can influence other countries or the world and encourage those influences to be like us, you can't just remove a form of leadership or management without having something that holds it together.
Right. Right. Or for particularly for countries who have no history of any kind of democratic rule or structure, they, they don't know how to operate that way. And and unless you assert yourself into their economies and politics, it will eventually revert to whatever it was before.
Yeah. Going back to the idea of this great experiment that we've been under, how do we know when we're being successful? What's the measurement of success?
That's a good question, Tom. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. It goes back to where the people who are the most vulnerable in a society, when those people feel protected, I think that's a pretty good, and people feel like they still have a pathway to the American dream, I guess.
So kind of the last question on this topic before we move into the next section. So with that, what would you say we need to do? Where's the actionable item out of this conversation, do you think? What should we do?
Well, when I was talking about this has always been a place, other countries, peoples who were maybe not feeling like they could participate as well as they wanted to in their own country. The United States was a place they dreamed of going. When it's no longer a place that other people want to come and live in, then I think we need to take a hard look at ourselves and say, what's going on here and why is that? I don't know if I want to open up this can of worms. We are a nation of immigrants. All three of us, our people came from somewhere else. And this idea that we no longer need or want a diverse melting pot, that to me is a sign that maybe we have gone off the rails in terms of where we want to be going as a nation. And I'm not talking about just opening up the borders to a floodgate of whoever, but I think we've forgotten that we need immigrants. They do the jobs that a lot of people here in the United States, citizens, don't want to do. And we need those people.
Well, that's the pathway, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
It was the pathway for our ancestors.
Yeah,
is that you do those jobs that the people who are already here and established don't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
And you do those jobs and you're able to work your way into society.
And you do them cheaply.
That's right. I mean, whether it's being, earlier on being simply a dirt farmer, or whether it is today being a landscaper or working in the food service industry,
Right.
those are entry-level kinds of positions that are still needed, and it is the pathway for people.
I feel compelled to remind us that not only are we a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of indigenous people.
Absolutely.
And that we have not had a great track record,
No.
Right.
on how we value that culture and those individuals. And it's sad when I look at the history. It's sad when I travel the country and I meet those individuals and have conversation. That I feel a lot of grief and shame there. But I also I'm also incensed with removing our history. And this is a rabbit trail, but we're not going to go down very far, but I'm incensed that we remove our history about how we have come to be the country we are and how we've treated people in that process.
Yeah.
So not to say that's a big rabbit trail.
It is. I'm going to add one little piece to it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. We have to keep in mind that we were not the native born here.
Yeah, that's correct.
And we push people out. And then we were part of a process that kidnapped people from other countries and brought them in.
That's correct. Yes.
And so, it's a total mixed bag, but it felt like until fairly recently, we were making some progress in becoming that kind of melding pot again of indigenous, of immigrants, of the kidnapped that were brought here against their will. So Anyway, okay,
Well,
you're right. It's a rabbit hole. We won't go there.
we won't go there, but honestly, Tom, it might be something that we want to visit sometime because I think it's a really important part of who we are, and we must not lose
But
that.
we should probably have a historian with us when we do it.
Yeah, absolutely, because you and I, we have opinions.
We don't know diddly squat, Joel, but we do have opinions.
Yeah.
Well, historians don't always agree with each other either.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point.
That's true.
So this conversation, Joel, I've been looking forward to it for a long time.
Yeah, this is really good.
And just for the listeners, Joel and I have been friends for a long time, as I mentioned in the preview here. But these are the kind of conversations sometimes we get to over coffee that's just so stimulating that I miss. But I want to move us to another question or two that we told you we were going to talk about. Tom and I, over the last year or so, have really been challenged personally. We've been challenged about how we treat other people, thinking about how can we become a kinder influence in the world. And it's been a really good exercise for us, and everyone that we talked with seems to have both been challenged and just excited about the question. We want to ask you about acts of kindness. We got two questions. The first one is, tell us about an act of kindness that you've received that made a difference to you. And then the second would be an act of kindness that you have done and hope that you made a difference to others. So the first one, tell us about an act of kindness that you've received that made a difference to you.
I have been the recipient of so many acts of kindness in my life that it's hard for me to drill down and pick out just one. But I remember a time, this was a number of years ago, and I had just gone through a divorce, and it was the first game of the first season of basketball where I was a single parent. And the first game of the season, I had to run to a nearby town to pick up my children and get back before the game started and to get my team ready to go. And I was really stressed out about it. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it. And just out of the blue, a friend of mine called me and said, Joel, I know this is the first game of the season, and I know that you're going to have to run over to this other community and pick up your children. She said, you're probably a little stressed out about it. I'd be happy to go pick them up for you or help you in any way. And that seems like such a simple little thing, but I didn't realize quite how stressed I was about it. And I broke down. I got teary over that. It was just such a random act of kindness that somebody, man, when you're a single parent without family around, it can be a little stressful to try to figure all that out and how you're gonna make things work. And that was one that has just always stuck with me over the years, and how kind that was for that person to think of me and my situation at that point.
Something you'll never forget.
I'll never forget it. That person will always hold a special place in my heart for that reason.
On the other side of acts of kindness, where have you reached out? Can you think of any event where you hope that your act of kindness had an impact on that person's life?
Yeah. One of the more recent ones was when I was working in a nearby corporation. There was a person that I officed with that was just fresh out of college, starting his own professional career. And he and his partner were really struggling financially, and they were having a lot of car trouble. And, here in the Midwest, especially, it's difficult to function without a car.
Yeah.
And I heard from somebody at church that an elderly person had just decided to give up driving and didn't want their car, or was going to have to do something with their car. And it was still a very dependable, nice vehicle. And I contacted them and said, listen, here's the situation. I have this young struggling couple. They have 2 children. Their car isn't dependable. Would you be willing to sell this to them cheaply, or I don't know what you're going to do with your car, but they could really use it. And they just gave this young couple their car. And this person was so grateful to have a dependable car to drive around.
Wow.
That's just a simple little thing, but I think I felt really good about being able to help them in that way with that.
Yeah.
Well, when we have a chance to think about these things that you just thought about, and all the other things that Tom and I have heard from others, That's what gives me hope.
Yeah.
Is that people still care about other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a book that was written in the early 90s, maybe, called The Kindness of Strangers, about a person who hitchhiked their way around the United States.
Oh.
And he wrote a book about it. And he talks, and he called it The Kindness of Strangers because of the number of times somebody just randomly helped him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I still think there's the human capacity for that, and something we ought to exercise more as often as possible.
Well, and that fits into some of our discussion as well about being able to support decisions that don't do us necessarily good,
right,
but helps other people. So one last question, and this is up to you to kind of take it and go where you want to go. But we often give our guests an opportunity to ask us a question. Do you have a question you would ask us?
Oh boy. I forgot this was going to be a question.
Oh, that's okay. We'll cut that part out. No worries.
Yeah, that's okay. You can let us off the hook too. I mean, really.
I think it's wonderful that you guys have maintained this relationship over the years with each other, and that you're doing something that is at least attempting to bring people together to get at the heart of some of what's happening nationally in this country. Okay, here's my question. Do you think you're making a difference?
That's a good question. I'm going to take a run at it, Tom, because the last
All right, good. Go for it.
I put you on the spot the last couple of times.
All right.
So, I don't know if we're making a difference out there as much as I believe that we're making a difference with me.
Okay.
I can speak for myself. I feel like this has been an exercise that has changed me. And so in that case, I say yes.
Yeah.
I know that I have had conversations with people who listen to the podcast who say, that was helpful. I now see maybe some of your guests or some of the things you've talked about differently than I did before. Yeah. And as an educator, and I had the opportunity to teach a couple classes with Joel, as an educator, that is gold when you feel like you have made a difference for someone to think a little differently. Yeah. So that's kind of my answer to your question.
Mine would be that I think that I would agree with Lamar that I think maybe a huge difference is actually for us in how this affects us and how it shifted some of our thinking. But we do have also little evidence of a little evidence that people outside are thinking differently. For example, we have a poll that we just run continuously in our show notes. It's called our Active Kindness Poll, and we ask people to write in and actually click on a link. It takes them to a Google form that they are asked the same two questions we asked you.
Okay,
we actually get people that do that.
That's great.
And it's not a huge number, but we get people on occasion that will come in and they'll leave a response. And so, that says that it's making a difference somewhere. And then we just get those random comments that people send in that we are surprised. We're also seeing our audience grow, which tells me that it's scratching some kind of itch out there, as Coach Hayden Fry of the Iowa Hawkeyes would have said a few years ago. And that's and that's really, really encouraging. We do not have Taylor Swift's following or Lady Gaga's following, but there seems to be a little bit of evidence that it makes a difference to a few people.
Do you feel like you're creating community for people?
That was our goal.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about third space, creating a safe place. I meet with a group of people every week that's the language that they're using now, which just does me good to hear people say, okay, this is a safe place now that we can talk about some things that are personal with us.
Right.
Where before that group, and not necessarily because of this podcast, but because of other things, but before that group was not necessarily a safe space. So things have changed with that group of, 20 people that I meet. And we have, I think, part of the influence of our structure here has been to give some language to that and maybe a little bit of direction, because I hear those terms. So I think that there is.
So I
some
think
impact.
that's great because I think people are desperately searching for community. They might not know what it is or that's what they're looking for, but boy, when they find it, it's like gold.
Yeah. Well, Joel,
this has been great.
Yeah, this was fun.
Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, it's been fun getting to know you a little bit, Tom.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Lamar's talked about you over the years, and it's nice to put a face to this person.
Now I'm worried.
All good things. All good things.
Well, Joel, I hope you'll consider coming back and chatting with us again. I think
I'd love to.
Really neither Lamar nor I are people that are historians, but we do like to read. We like to keep up on what's happening. But it is very interesting to talk with somebody who has kind of this broader context to bounce ideas and crazy thoughts off of. So I hope you'll come back.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay. See you guys.
You bet.
All right. Bye-bye.
Wow. Tom, I'm so glad you had a chance to hear a little bit from Joel, and this is kind of what my coffees are like with Joel. What was your experience? What was your thoughts today about this discussion about democracy and republic?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for introducing me to Joel. I just had a wonderful time getting to know him and having this conversation with him. I thought it was really, really great. In terms of the conversation, I keep coming back to this idea of the ethical culture of politics that he was talking about in so many different ways, and that and largely the sense that, are people able to act or make decisions that go against their interests? And we have lost so much of that the ability to do that really underpins the ability to compromise and to work together. And that's my big takeaway from this. I just want to say, I hope we can get Joel to come back.
Yeah.
And continue conversations with us.
Yeah, maybe after we have the midterm elections, it might be a good time to have Joel back. And I think getting a broader understanding of this country's pathway towards democracy and government has been helpful. And I really, I'm continuing to be encouraged that as a country, we have opportunities to continue with this grand experiment and go down a positive road, even though sometimes things may not always look that way.
Yeah. So, absolutely.
I enjoyed the conversation, and we will revisit it again.
Absolutely. Let's do that. All right, Lamar, you have a good week.
Okay, and go flying cows.
Absolutely.
All right.
See you later.
Yeah.
Tom here. Thank you for listening to Getting to Third Space with Lamar and Tom. Remember to click on subscribe to get notices about new episodes, and be sure to like and share the podcast as well. Opinions and ideas expressed in this podcast are solely those of Lamar Roth and Tom Klaus, and we'd like to hear your opinions and ideas too. You can leave us a voice message on Spotify, or you can email us at the addresses found in the show notes. Also, in the show notes, you can find links to some of the things we talked about today, so you can check them out yourself. Until next time, keep moving forward toward third space.
This podcast was reviewed and approved by Jake and Ebby Dogs Incorporated.